Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
And here we are, the day that everybody has been waiting for months. Today, it's the Iowa Caucasians, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody been waiting for this. Wait till the Black Lives Matter crowd hears about what really is going on here. Yes, I know. Here is the telephone number if you want to be on the program and weigh in today. Telephone number is 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. This really has the potential to be a momentous day, or at least the beginning of a momentous year, because so much is at stake here. And I want to remind you of something that I've repeatedly said over the course of many months. The media has 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to fill. And as such, what has always been thought of as news has become hype and agenda and any number of things. There's really not enough interesting news to fill it up 24/7. And particularly when you get to politics. So, we've had a build-up here to primarily this event today, and we've had polling data, and the polling data has told us any number of things, and I can review it for you if you want. I mean, depending on the Republican side, depending on which poll and which day, it's nip and tuck, Trump and Cruz. One poll today has Cruz maintaining the lead. Some other polls have Trump overtaking the lead. Rubio in third place. But all of this is just polling. The dean of the polls, the supposed most respected poll, the poll that everybody eagle eyes, is the Des Moines Register poll, which happens the final weekend, the prior to the caucus. And that poll came out, and it had, what did it say? Was it Trump wins this thing by 3 or 4 over Cruz and then Rubio, if I have that right. The problem with the Des Moines Register poll is that it's projecting a record turnout on the Republican side, but there hasn't been enough new Republican registration to indicate this massive record-setting Republican turnout. But when I say it establishes a record turnout, in the polling sample, the way that they decided to put together the sample, the pollster is anticipating a massive turnout, projected turnout, and some experts say it's way too high, which means that the poll that everybody looks at could be a little bit out of kilter. The point is they all could be out of kilter. I'll run a couple theories by you. But one thing before I get to that, up to now, all we've had is polls and theories. If Rubio wins and comes out of nowhere, what does that mean for New Hampshire? And here come the theories. If Trump wins Iowa, which a few weeks ago was not supposed to happen, then what does that mean for New Hampshire and on down the road? If Cruz wins Iowa, what does that mean if there is a shocker and somebody like Jeb finishes in second or third place, or Kasich or what have you? What does that do to shake everything up? And everybody's had an answer for every one of these scenarios. But the point is, it's meaningless. All it is projection and poll, with some people doing the best they can. I mean, I'm not suggesting there's been chicanery here, although there may have been. My point is that once this night is over and there are actual votes that have been cast or selections made in caucuses, to be precise, then it changes everything. There isn't any theory anymore. So you go through the list. If Trump wins this tonight, then that's going to shape the coverage and the projections for the rest of the primaries in ways that may not have been touted upon. Likewise, if Cruz wins. Likewise, if somebody comes out of nowhere and wins, if Bernie Sanders wins, even though the polling data and any numbers of people analyzing it have theorized all these things, it's going to change dramatically when there's actually a hard result. And look, this is nothing you don't know, and I'm not trying to suggest this is earth-shattering. I'm saying the whole dynamic is going to change from polling data to reality. Because right now, all we've got, polling, depending on how you want to look at it, is an expert analysis or a wild guess, depending on how you look at it. And with as many people now who may not be as upfront and honest with pollsters, for example, I saw over the weekend that Trump does much better when being polled by a computer than by a human being. I think that's what it might have been Cruz. But the point is, when a computer calls you and asks you what you're going to do, you're more honest than if you're talking to a human being. The theory being psychologically, you don't want to say anything the pollster might cause the pollster to think that you're an idiot. So you give the answer that you think the pollster is expecting, whatever would happen to be. And we've had instances of this in the past with the Wilder effect and other examples of that. But it's just going to change everything. And look at the number of months that we have had that have been based on the result analysis, have been based largely on pure speculation, based on polling data. And even though people have extrapolated in their theories what each result would mean, it's going to change everything once you have a winner. And who shows up in second and third place in both parties. Each party has its own unique storyline or set of storylines. On the Democrat side, the secret storyline is the near panic. From everything I can gather, the near panic in the Democrat Party over Hillary and this email story. And the reason for the near panic is that there's nobody to go to. If something happens to Hillary, they've got Bernie, crazy Bernie. Even though crazy Bernie is drawing all the crowds, and even though crazy Bernie is energizing the anti-Washington crowd on the Democrat side, they still can't see him being the nominee. Although I don't know what else they would do. But there's this real worry about this email thing. With Hillary, much more than any Democrat would admit to the media. In fact, some of them have admitted to the media just writing herd on it, not telling the whole story about that. And that story, by the way, Hillary's email story, continues to get worse and worse and worse as the days go by. And now the latest is that the FBI and the Justice, if we're to believe this, are livid that Obama has inserted himself in this story by claiming Hillary didn't do anything and that he only found out about this on the news when it's now clearly been established that he knew about it long ago because he was exchanging emails with him. And so were the other intelligence agencies. Every one of them knew that Hillary was doing things off the books. Why didn't they say anything? We're talking 16 different intelligence agencies. CIA, DIA, NSA, they were all emailing things back and forth to Hillary, and they all had to know what she was doing. Why didn't one of them say anything at some point in all this? So there's a lot effervescing beneath the surface here. On the Republican side, I have encountered a couple of hopeful theories from anti-Trump people writing on the internet. Not necessary to mention any names, not the point. But one of the prevalent theories that I have read from people who are hopeful that Trump does not win the Hawkeye Caucus and hopeful that Trump does not win the Republican nomination. Theory goes like this. You have a bunch of angry people on the Republican side, and they're fed, and it's legitimate. They're fed up with Washington. They're fed up with the establishment. The establishment has been given 2 landslide victories in 2010, 2014. You know the drill. All the promises to stop Obamacare, all the promises to stop Obama, period. None of it's happened. And the anger is profound. The rage is profound. And so people, in order to demonstrate their anger in the best way they know how, have flocked to Donald Trump. Because that, as far as they're concerned, is the single best way to show the establishment what you think of them is to go out and support somebody who has nothing to do with them. That would throw them all out if he wins. The theory goes that those people, when it comes time to actually caucus, are not going to select Trump. The theory says that they're going to be gripped by a moment of seriousness and that they will realize that they have demonstrated their rage sufficiently so that everybody knows they don't have. And when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, many in the Trump camp will vote for Cruz or Rubio or somebody else because this time it matters. It's not a poll. It's not a pollster calling. It's not a computer for a polling company calling. It's not a focus group. It's the real thing. And they will get in there and they will caucus and they will figure out, okay, we've sent our message. Now, for this theory to have any weight or validity, this theory requires that Trump's support is soft. Now, you have to be the judge of whether or not you think Trump's support is soft. Trump's unfavorables are through the roof. Trump's unfavorables are up at 50. They're north of 50% nationwide. And so the people that have these theories, people are going to realize they nominate Trump. There's no way he can win. The country, over half the country doesn't like the guy. There's no way. They're not that stupid. Others, oh, yes, it's not that they're stupid. It's they're that mad. And that they will gladly take the Republican Party down for the count if that's what it takes to express their anger. And if voting for Trump is what it takes to send that message, they'll do it. That they will not stop at this point. So it's all over the place. People have a lot of hope invested in the outcome here. People have a lot of, in some cases, their careers are invested in the outcome here. For the rest of us, it's all about the country and the future of the country. And many people believing that this is it, that if the Democrats win the White House in this upcoming election, that we've lost the nation for a generation at least. The next president's a Democrat, bare minimum 4 Supreme Court nominations, because the aging leftists on the court, many of whom want to retire now, are not doing so until they are sure there is going to be a Democrat president next time around. And even if they're not eager to retire, their age is such that in the next 4 years they will. Point is, whoever the next president is going to have a large number of Supreme Court vacancies to fill. And if the Democrats own those 4, coupled with everything else they've been able to jury rig in the judicial system nationwide at all the various different levels, federal and district courts and so forth, that it's a nightmare scenario. If a Democrat's elected to continue the transformation of this country begun by Barack Obama, that we're in deep doo-doo. And it is. I agree with people who think that it's that serious. That is what we are up against. The same token, if I hear all these Republicans, and you know who they are, you've heard them yourself, run around talking about the era of Reagan is over, and we need to get past this Reagan fetish that we all have. You take a look at the Republican nominees here, and even some who haven't made it this far, but they're all, I can give you Cruz, I can give you Rubio, Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, before he got out. Those are all people in their 40s to early 50s who are Reaganites. They all came of age and were influenced by Reagan. The future of the Republican Party, as represented by candidates in the primary, are all Reaganites to one degree or another, meaning there's no way the era of Reagan is over. It's an opportunity to continue it. It's an opportunity to build on it. It's an opportunity to actually elect a Republican president who is a Reaganite. Now, there are Republicans running who aren't Reaganites either. They are more establishment type. But the point is, the era of Reagan being over is a wish that is held onto tightly by many in the Republican establishment. So there's a tremendous opportunity that awaits everybody, and it all starts today and tonight in the Iowa caucus. Donald Trump is not predicting a win in Iowa. A lot of people looking at him, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, if he's not, there must be some doubt in the Trump camp. As for Trump, I wasn't surprised. I just a little stunned when Trump starts speaking positively of he didn't come out for single payer health care, but he made it clear that when it comes to health care, he's closer to the Obama approach than to the traditional Republican. I was stunned. when I saw what Trump had said on TV. Literally taken aback by it. Anyway, we'll get into all this in detail as the program unfolds today. And again, your beloved host, is in a lion's share of the audio sound bites today. And these are somewhat interesting, actually, somewhat relevant. So I'm going to lead off with them rather than relegate them to the third hour, as I've been doing recent days. You sit tight, be patient. We'll be back and continue with all the rest of it right after this. Look, here's a good way to illustrate the point. And when I say I was surprised, but I'm surprised that it was admitted to, not that Trump would think what he thinks. I'm not surprised by any of that. I've often thought that Mr. Trump may not really know ideologically the composition of his support base, except on the issue of immigration. And his healthcare comments sort of indicated that to me. But anyway, more on that as the program unfolds. I want to tell me the Christian Science Monitor here. Why America might elect a president it doesn't like. As though that's going to happen. Here's what they say. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have among the highest unfavorability ratings of recent presidential candidates. And their success shows how U.S. politics is changing. The article says, it is possible, perhaps even probable, that this fall's election will be contested between two of three most disliked presidential candidates of at least the past 25 years. And it's possible, perhaps even probable, that this is not a coincidence. There was a Gallup survey released on Saturday, shows that Donald Trump has the highest unfavorability rating, 60%, of any presidential candidate since Gallup started tracking the number in 1992. That's how recent polling data has actually started tracking unfavorability. It's not something that's centuries old. It only dates back to 1992. And according to Gallup, Trump comes in with the highest unfavorable number they have ever seen since they began surveying that. For her part, Hillary Clinton ranks third in unfavorability at 52%. George H.W. Bush 41 is at number 2. So the most unfavorable right now is Trump. Then H.W. Bush is not running, obviously, and Hillary Clinton in third place. So in other words, the 2016 presidential election could be decided between two people that a majority of Americans, according to Gallup, do not like politically. Now, does that, as you hear that stated, does that make any sense to you? How is somebody like Hillary Clinton with 52% unfavor? This is nationwide. This is not within parties. This is voting population at large. How does somebody win with those kinds of numbers? But the conventional wisdom is that, hey, not only is it possible, it looks like it's pretty likely. I've always been curious about unfavorable numbers, like and dislike numbers, much as I have been curious about most poll results anyway. But those two numbers do stand out in a profound way. And we'll find out. Once we have actual votes tonight, I guarantee you everything changes, folks. Our guiding light through times of trouble and confusion. Rush Limbaugh sorting it all out, making the complex understandable. So a raft of email reactions during the break. Rush, you've often talked about favorable and unfavorable. Even yourself, Rush, you've talked about how you couldn't survive without all the people listening to you who don't like you. Yes. And I've also, you may not believe this, folks, but over the course of the years, many have suggested I run for office. I know that may come as a shock. And what have I always said? There's no way. I wouldn't stand a prayer at getting elected to anything. I'm the guy that invented the word feminazi. I mean, all the stuff that's been collected that I've said over the years, imagine the negative ads. And people say, yeah, but Rush, you admit you've got so many people in your audience that hate you, and they tune every day to keep hating you, and you got to keep giving. Yeah, but getting an audience is different than getting votes. Getting an audience to a program like this and holding an audience is much different than getting votes. And then on the other hand, high unfavorables are quite natural because everybody in politics is looked at as a suspect now, just by virtue of the game. And one of the reasons for it, and there are many valid reasons for it, and Tucker Carlson writes about this today, and I've got it somewhere in my stack here. It's a point that I have made frequently in the last several months specifically, but for much longer than that. The notion of how out of touch Washington is, the disconnect between Washington, D.C. and the rest of the country, what I call the country, the people that make the country work. And it is this. If you're in Washington, everything in Washington's fine. The unemployment rate's 3%. The per capita income there is way above average. Construction's going on left and right. Nobody's in dire straits, not for very long. There's all kinds of money floating around Washington, D.C. Everybody there knows everybody. You go walking down the street, you don't worry about crime except in a very small specific area of the actual city. Other than that, it's idyllic. And the people that live there absolutely love it. And more people are moving there constantly. If you look at the population of the Maryland and Virginia suburbs outside Washington, they're growing leaps and bounds, and corporations are putting satellite or even headquarter offices there. In other words, life in Washington has nothing in common with life in most of the rest of the country. Whatever the real estate prices are, you can afford them in Washington. You can either afford to rent, you can either afford to buy, whatever. And it's a nice place for the most part. It's totally unlike the rest of the country. And then you add all of the social pressures that exist there and the desire to climb the social ladder as well as the professional ladder. And you have a bunch of people who have no idea. That's where, by the way, you find the most avid support for amnesty, correct? Right in Washington, D.C., people, both parties, donor class, elected officials, because it's not going to affect them. All of the illegal immigration that's happened up till now, they don't live near it. They're not impacted by it. They're not impacted by the unemployment circumstance. They're not impacted at all by the lack of career opportunities because the people that end up in Washington happen to go through a training program that is nothing more than the Ivy League universities. And they get plucked and they're thrust into the system where they get their training and so forth, and they grow up and everything's fine. It's as fine in Washington today as it was in your little town, neighborhood, city when you grew up 40, 50 years ago. But it's not like very much of the rest of the country. And so there's this huge disconnect. But the people in the rest of the country know full well that the people in Washington are out of touch, that there's this giant disconnect. So this idea that politicians, people that represent the political status quo, would have high unfavorable numbers is totally understandable. And if you look at both parties, the Republican frontrunner right now, Donald Trump, also has the highest unfavorables. The Democrat frontrunner has the highest unfavorables. This is polling data. We haven't actually had a vote cast yet. That's why all of this stuff, I'm telling you, it's possible that the polling data is going to be right on the money and there aren't going to be very many surprises, but I doubt that. I think it's just the opposite. And even if the polling data ends up being pretty right on, the fact that there are hard results after tonight is going to change the dynamic of this in ways that months and months of polling cannot. I'm just telling you so that you can be prepared for it. And you instinctively know this yourself. But the class differences, the economic differences that exist in Washington versus the rest of the country are widely known, widely understood. My point is that this anger at Washington is entirely valid. And people have made jokes about Congress since Congress was formed, and Will Rogers made a career out of making fun of Congress and elected officials. But in my lifetime, I've never seen it as intense. I've never seen it as deep and as institutional as it is. The level of distrust, the number of people, the millions of people who are convinced the entire system is corrupt, that think their votes don't matter. That's always been, you've always had people who think that. It's record numbers now. And I think, you get to this Detroit Des Moines Register poll. It's too many numbers here in this story. It's hard to follow numbers when you're listening to them. But the bottom line of one of the people now analyzing the Des Moines Register poll is that the projected turnout here is just way, way, way too high. And one of the things uncovered in the analysis is that there hasn't been a massive increase in brand new party registration either side in this contest, despite all this intensity out there. The media, because of the nature of their business and so forth, tends to make everything they're interested in the biggest and most important things in the country to everybody else. It's part of the arrogance and I think relative condescension that the people in Washington, in the media, whatever they think is fascinating, they think everybody else is fascinated to the same degree. And whatever they think about things from issue to issue, they think a majority of Americans agrees. And I'm telling you, the disconnect is such that isn't the case. I just think there's a potential here for a few surprises here tonight. And not just here, but you get into New Hampshire. We'll find out. It won't be long now. Okay, audio sound bites are coming up. Got to take a brief time out. We'll get to them because they're fascinating, too. Right after this, we get started. Sit tight, folks. We'll be right back. If you are on hold, I want you to stay there. I want you to be patient. Got a good roster of people waiting. We'll get to you in mere moments. NPR on Friday, a program called On the Media. Their host is Brooke Gladstone. And she's speaking with a political reporter from WNYC. That'd be the PBS station in New York. His name is Matt Katz, about the presidential race. And they're talking about Trump and his decision to skip the debate.
If the Beltway pundits were shocked at the audacity of Trump's debate snub, commentators outside the mainstream saw it coming a mile away. Talk radio guru Rush Limbaugh.
He controls the media when he's not on it. He controls the media when he is on it. He controls the media when he's asleep. Nobody else has been able to do anything like this short of the Kennedys. And they're pikers compared to the way Trump is doing this.
To any of you who may have heard rumors of talk radio's decline, all I can say is not this primary season. This truly is conservative talk radio's election.
That's NPR. The El Rushbo soundbites on NPR. Same program, same host, Brooke Gladstone talking to Matt Katz, the reporter. After that soundbite, She turns to Kat, says, "Hey, Matt, political reporter for WNYC, avid listener to conservative talk radio. Has talk radio taken a side, Trump or Cruz?"
They are mostly playing it coy, led by Rush Limbaugh, who will sometimes have mild critiques of one or the other, and his criticism is read very carefully, like tea leaves, to see what he really means. It's very interesting to see that, unlike previous elections, talk radio has two guys that are sort of personify their ideal Republican candidate. Trump is starting to supplant Cruz, and not because of ideological reasons. He has more pizzazz than Cruz. Trump has this cross-cultural appeal. It's not all angry old white men who like him, and that's, what I'm told, is consistent with the listenership of talk radio. It's a little bit more diverse than you might expect.
So here's two sound bites here where at NPR they say, wait a minute, talk radio not in decline, and it's not just angry white guys. What did they put in the soup over there in the cafeteria at NPR? And here they are trying to read the tea leaves, trying to figure out, what am I really saying? You don't have to read the tea leaves with me. I tell you what I think. You know, I don't speak in code. Anyway, there's more here. So after these two bites, talk radio not in decline, and hey, you know what? It's not all angry old white guys. It's a little bit more diverse than you might expect. So then the hostette comes back and says, Cruz's campaign chairman said that the reach of talk radio is greater than every other medium. I guess that's possible. Radio signals blanket the country even more thoroughly than TV signals, but doesn't have greater influence than TV. Now, this is a fascinating question. The whole notion of radio signals blanket more than TV. You ever heard of cable? It's in determining which medium is dominant. That's not a factor. Is the coverage of the country by virtue of waves? It's content. It has always been content, and it's always going to be content. My contention is that you people, if you had to, would go out and get a couple of tin cans and a piece of string to list this program if that's the only way you could, no matter what tech advances there are, because it's content. So, is it possible that radio is having greater influence than television, Matt? Is it possible?
It's hard to get a sense of the numbers. The role of it in the larger communication apparatus of conservatives is really the way to evaluate its influence, I think. They represent the grassroots, whatever that might mean.
Is that another way of saying the base, which is another way of saying the most extreme?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, it's hard to understand until you listen how much these people can't stand their elected Republicans. They believe their elected officials have for too long neglected their voices.
You know, there is a type, at NPR, and I don't want to be too sarcastic here, because they're finally getting some things right, but it's hard to get a sense of the numbers, the role of it in the larger communication apparatus of conservatives is really the way to evaluate its influence. I think represents the grassroots, whatever that might mean, grassroots. Is that another way of saying the base, which is another way of saying, like, these people don't know what the grassroots is, like it's foreign language to them, and they may not know. The grassroots is as far away from Washington as you can get. As far as these people are concerned, the center of the universe is Washington. Grassroots? What do they mean, the grassroots? But they're listening. They're trying to figure it out. Here's the final soundbite between this two.
Absolutely. Rush is right when he says this.
Talk radio, it's a euphemism. Talk radio means the base of the party. Talk radio means the grassroots. Talk radio means Tea Party, what have you.
It is not just a medium. Talk radio represents a ideology. Polls indicate that Ted Cruz and Donald Trump will, in Iowa, finish in first or second place. And it is no surprise that they are the two most popular candidates on conservative talk. And if Donald Trump becomes the president, we will have a talk radio host as the president of the United States.
So you realize what this guy is saying, whether he realizes it or not. What's he saying? What's this guy saying? When he says that we're going to have a talk radio host as president. He's saying he's not saying that. He's saying that Trump has adopted the characteristics of talk radio in order to succeed. That's what he's saying. You think he's saying that talk radio will have so much influence it will elect the next president. That's what you think he's saying. He might be saying that. I don't know. But Donald Trump becomes the president, we'll have a talk radio host. I think they look at Trump and they say it's bombast and all that. That's talk radio. But then these guys went out and actually started researching, and they found it's more than the bombast. It's more than anger. It's more than the white guys. Oh, gee, you know what? This is really big. It's much bigger than we thought. Oh, wow. This is NPR. Remember, without your pledge, we will not dust. Back after this. Okay, Mike in Franklin, Tennessee. Grab a call here before the hour expires. How are you? Great to have you on the program, sir.
Fine, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I was listening to your opening remark about Trump, and you're concerned about him appearing to gravitate closer to Obamacare than you would like.
Yeah.
I hear Trump making specific comments about a small, specific segment of society, and mainly the unfortunate who are having issues one way or another, not being able to get health care or take care of themselves. I don't hear him talking single payer or mandated health care like Obamacare.
No, but see, my problem is that we're already doing that twice. Medicaid, Medicare, we're spending hundreds of billions. People are treated. They're not dying on the sidewalks. They can go to the emergency room any time. But that is how Obama sold Obamacare. You go after emotion. See, emotion's always going to trump thought, sadly. And we're going to relive this after we've got Obamacare that was designed, and it's interesting how it's failing. It doesn't work. Government running things doesn't work. And now we hear that, well, maybe the government making sure people on the sidewalk get to the hospital and don't die. We've been there, done that. It was a red flag for me. I don't know what to tell you. It was a red flag because it said to me that the solution to this problem is Washington. And it's not. The solution to the problems that we have in this country is get Washington out of them. I mean, all these things that are wrong. That's why we're in this mess. So that's why it was a red flag. I appreciate your calling, giving me an opportunity to explain that. Be right back here, folks. Greetings and welcome back. Music lovers, thrill seekers all across the fruited plain. Rush Limbaugh at 800-282-2882 and the email address lrushmo@eibnet.com. Great to have you here. As the official kickoff now, the 2016 presidential campaign has begun. Now, just to expand here a little bit, folks, to me, the problems with health care are a lot like the problems with immigration. And in not just those two. I mean, you can take pretty much every problem that we have in this country, and this is what's so frustrating to me. You can tack it all. All. Now, there's been some help, but you can tack it all to Barack Obama and the Democrat Party. Everything that has happened that makes you unhappy, has you ill at ease, worried about the future. You live in the greatest country on earth. For the last 7 years, we've been led by people who have not believed in this country, do not like the way this country was founded. And they have gone about to change it. They have set about and they have succeeded to transform it, not just politically, culturally as well. They have done their best to turn this country upside down. They have practiced from the belief that the people who have been successful in this country have not earned it, that the game was rigged and it was given to them, that it was handed to them, and that the losers, as they look at things, life's winners and losers, they think that it's unfair, an unfair system that created that, so they want to re-rig the game and pick the winners and losers. But their objective is to create losers. Their objective is to create losers who do not see any future for them as self-reliant, who only see a future for themselves if the government is involved in their life somehow, some way, every day. The Democrat Party no longer has any middle-of-the-roaders in it. It no longer has any centrists in it. It no longer has any moderates. Well, maybe Joe Manchin. But you can't name more than a couple. They are total radicals now, and defined as radicals by people who have never liked the country. They have not respected what it stood for, what it was formed to be, the ways in which it was founded, none of it. They're angry, they're mad all the time, unhappy, and they want to spread that unhappiness. They create chaos after chaos after chaos to keep people on edge, with the ultimate aim being to have as many people as possible turn to Washington, D.C. for the solution to everything not right in their lives. Meanwhile, they are the people creating all of these things that are not right in people's lives. It is a singular quest, and the quest is for power. It is not about improving the lives of the most people. It's not about freedom and liberty. It's not about the U.S. Constitution. It's about the acquisition of singular power for as long as they can hold on to it. Let's get specific. You look at the problems with immigration. If we had enforced our immigration laws, we would not be in the problem, would not have the problems, and would not be in the trouble we're in today. We've got plenty of immigration law, and it's good. And were it enforced, we wouldn't have this problem. There isn't a need for comprehensive immigration reform. There isn't a need for new law. It's all there. All we have to do is enforce it. If we had allowed the laws of supply and demand, i.e. the marketplace, to run health care instead of government for the last 50 years, we wouldn't be where we are in health care today either. I mean, health care is this massively complex and impossibly expensive proposition today. But it need not be. Why isn't the hotel business massively complex and impossible to afford? Why isn't the airline business? Why isn't, pick any business, why isn't it as screwed up as healthcare? Now, I can imagine all the answers being, everybody gets sick, Rush, and everybody needs healthcare. Right, but why does a Band-Aid cost $500 or whatever it costs if you're in a hospital? You know, the market is an amazing thing that functions exactly as it should. I love using the example of hotels. We have a range of hotels in this country, motels, hotels, whatever you want, you can find it. You can find the most expensive 5-star hotel experience in the world if you want to pay for it. And if you want to spend $20 a night or an hour, you can do that. Whatever you want, the hotel business has it for you. It's all based on the ability of the customer to pay. Not everybody can afford a 5-star multi-room hotel suite, but some people can and will happily pay for it. So some of them are available. But if you're not into that, if you want to spend whatever it is at a Motel 6 or take your pick, it's there for you. There's no reason health care shouldn't be the same. But the problem began when Harris Wofford said, well, if our Constitution is going to provide you with a lawyer, it ought to provide you health care. It ought to be a constitutional right. And then came the notion that all health care should be equal, that everybody should get the same kind of treatment, i.e. the best, no matter what it costs. Democrat Party came along and said, that's what we're going to provide for you. Is it working? You know what's happening in healthcare right now? The people who can afford the best are getting it. You know what's happening? Doctors are leaving Medicare, leaving Medicaid, setting up private practice, and they're taking on 25 or 30 customers who pay them a retainer like you'd pay a lawyer against whatever you're going to need healthcare-wise the rest of the year. So you pay to reserve your doctor, and then whatever you need healthcare-wise, you pay for that. But the doctor's always available for you. You know what you're going to get. And the market's making it possible until Obama and the gang figure out how to shut that down, which they will, because it undermines their whole premise that everybody's entitled to the same. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as total equality, totally sameness when we're talking about outcome, because people are different. They have different education, ambition, intelligence, desire, you name it. But the desire to spread equality of outcome using class warfare and class envy, which is their stock in trade, creates false promises, impossible promises, which can never be kept, which keeps people perpetually upset and angry and feeling disadvantaged or what have you. If the solution to immigration is to simply enforce our laws, and it isn't really more complicated. Well, it's a little bit more complicated because we have to deal with the massive reality of allowing people to get away with breaking the laws for who knows how many decades now. But fix that, secure the border, enforce the law, problem solved. It is not complex. It's made to sound complex by people who don't want to do it. And if the marketplace would just be allowed to work in healthcare, where whatever you want you can get, stop going to the doctor for hangnails and so forth, it would make a lot more sense. It may not totally reform it and fix it. It would make a lot more sense than what we have now. This system is unsustainable. Obamacare was not designed to succeed. Obamacare was designed to create the very chaos, the very inequities, the very inequalities that we have, so that one day, in total frustration, massive numbers of Americans would throw their hands up and say, look, just let the government do it. Or the government would say, it's such a mess, we've tried, let us fix it. We'll be the sole provider. We'll be the sole source. Yeah, man, because that'll be seen as making it less complicated. But it doesn't work. It never has worked. Wherever you go in the world, this approach never, ever has worked. And our country cannot take any more of this and maintain its brilliance and its founding, its opportunity for the most, its prosperity. It's just not possible. Besides that, elements of the Democrat Party are taking direct aim at that America for whatever host of varying reasons. So when I hear candidates start talking about issues that make me think I'm listening to Democrats or make me think I'm listening to people who think the solution to all this is more government, bigger government, smarter government, what have you, red flags fly high. Because government, and this is not a cliche, and it's not simplistic conservatism, government is the problem. Who says Barack Obama is an expert in anything? Yeah, he's elected president. What's he an expert? He taught constitutional law. He's not even an expert in the Constitution. Is he an expert in health care? He certainly isn't. There isn't a Democrat who is. And yet they are invested in by people that vote for him as the experts. They cause the problems. They create the problems. Then they demand they be allowed to create the solution, if people go for it. It's been one of the most. Socialism's a fraud. I've been amazed. There's something about it that's seductive. It has been demonstrated to be a fraud. I don't know how many times. Socialism, communism, totalitarianism, whatever you want to call it, it's a demonstrable fraud. False promises, phony promises. Impossible promises. Demonstrable failures throughout human history, and yet it continues to seduce people. And I'm convinced it does so by the expert usage of the fairness and equality and compassion arguments. It's not so much that those work. What's really insidious about this is that proponents of free markets, proponents of getting government out of as much of this as possible and just let the market handle. Those people are successfully called mean-spirited, heartless, cold, and nothing could be further from the truth about every one of them who is accused of being that. They are the exact opposite, in fact. If you ask me, it's people like Barack Obama who are really cold-hearted and mean-spirited, but they get credit for all this compassion. And so Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton they pose a real threat to the future of this country. They pose a grave danger. Either one of them guarantee exactly the misery we have today multiplied. No question about it. Not possible for them to make life in America better. Not even for the people who are going to be the beneficiaries of whatever it is they're passing out. Think I'm wrong? Take a look at their beneficiaries now and find the happiness for me. Find the happiness among those in poverty. Find the happiness among what they call the poor. Find the happiness in the minorities that vote for them in droves. Find the happiness. I mean, even their wealthy voters and supporters, you can't run into them without finding people angry, mad, ticked off about something from Hollywood to academia. They're constantly enraged, constantly angry. Where's the happiness? Where is all of this utopia that's supposed to have happened by now? Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, multiply whatever you think is wrong now. Whatever you think of health care, whatever you think of spending, whatever you think of the financial system, whatever you think of the culture, whatever you think of any aspect of American life, guaranteed you'll be even more miserable. Guaranteed you'll be even more worried. Guaranteed you'll be even more depressed, because it's only going to get worse. It can't get better. What they believe in doesn't work. What they believe in is destructive. So yeah, today begins a really, really crucial year. This is the day it really begins, because this is the day votes are cast for the first time. And believe me, that's going to change the dynamic of everything. Tonight, tomorrow is going to be much different than all the past months, because all the past months have just been speculation to fill time. Wild guesses, educated guesses, expert analysis, what have you. Tonight, reality begins. And nobody knows for sure what's going to happen tonight or next week in New Hampshire or beyond that. But it won't take long to start getting a feel for it. Because after the votes are counted, for many people, it's going to be senseless to remain in the race. You'll see people dropping out, and that alone is going to change the dynamic. The people dropping out do have supporters. They're going to go somewhere. Nobody knows how that's going to shake out. Might have experts who think they can tell you, but nobody knows. This is the year where we're going to find out if a majority of people in this country actually want what's happening today, this destruction, this mess, this deterioration, if they want it stopped. We'll find out. I think they do. Back after this. Tom Dung Heap Harkin, senator from Iowa. There's a reason we call him that, and I've forgotten what it is. But he kept talking about dung heaps or something one day, and it might have something to do with conservatism or whatever, so we just reversed it and have been calling him. He was a Washington Journal on C-SPAN today, and he got a caller from somebody named Karen from Virginia, who said, Hillary Clinton has my support because she has earned it. And when we stop looking at what's popular and start looking at who earned it, then we'll be on the right path.
I think the extreme right wing of the Republican Party, sort of the Tea Party, the right-wingers, the Rush Limbaughs, that type, are attacking, and what they're afraid of is they're afraid that Hillary Clinton, as president, will be able to work with moderate Republicans and Democrats to actually get things done. And that's what they're afraid of.
Well, in the first place, here, the question is interesting. I think if we stop looking at what's popular and start looking at who's earned it, then we'll be on the right path. Hillary Clinton has earned it. That's the whole point. She hasn't. She's the beneficiary of, I don't know, it's something similar to nepotism or whatever. I mean, this is payback. And they tried to pay her back in 2008, and the party didn't want her then. And it's looking like a whole lot of Democrats don't want her now. You ought to see the crowds that she's drawn. Folks, 30 people, 400 people, 250 people. It's tiny, the pictures of her. If I'm Hillary Clinton, after one of these things, I have to be asking my staff, what the hell are you doing? Where are my crowds? Because on the next page of the paper, there's 10,000 showing up for Bernie, 15,000 for Bernie, in the same place as Hillary is going. It's stunning. But Hillary Clinton working with moderate Republicans and Democrats to get things done? Yeah. I mean, there's a certain, like, kind of what's been going on now with Obama. So Senator Harkin's not far off the beaten path. It's a bit more complicated than that, pretty much. Mercedes Schlapp, Republican strategist, on Howard Kurt's Media Buzz show on Fox News Channel yesterday morning. And what was the, I don't know. Well, I'm out of time here to play the bite here because I can't find the question. Here's, it's a good bite, too. But we'll have to save this for when we get back from the break here at the bottom of the hour. Gloria Steinem has weighed in on why women like Trump. Now, here's Gloria Steinem, who is the mother of modern feminism. How can anybody pro-abort be a mother? But she is. She said the only reason women like Trump, what do you think it is? The only reason women like Trump is his money. Really? Is that how little things have changed? Okay, Media Buzz, the name of the show, Sunday morning, Fox News Channel. Howard Kurtz speaking with a Republican strategist named Mercedes Schlapp about the primary race. His question was, Trump does get criticized frequently on Fox by some of the more prominent conservative commentators, Dr. Krauthammer, George Will, Jonah Goldberg, Steve Hayes, and then there's the National Review and Rich Lowry, which devoted a whole issue trying to say he's not really a conservative, but those aren't the only conservative voices. And some are sympathetic to Trump, Ms. Schlapp.
The Trump supporters, if Trump is not happy with Fox, the Trump supporters are not going to be happy with Fox. And so what's happening is that, for example, like Rush Limbaugh, they have been more sympathetic and Breitbart towards Trump and what Trump's populist movement is doing and affecting and impacting the electorate. And so, in essence, what's happening is that you have just this conservative grassroots base that really, they're listening to the talk radio. They're mad at Fox, especially those Trump supporters when Trump is not happy with the network.
So Ms. Schlapp here is saying that El Rushbo and talk radio have more, this is in her opinion, have more influence than Fox and conservative writers. I don't, I mean, it's one way of looking at it. I think it's more about alignment. Folks, it all boils down to who people think is the establishment and the elites and who they think isn't. It really isn't any more complicated than that, I don't believe. And I think people are I think the thing about the establishment, the elites, is I think they underestimate, in fact, I know they do, the sophistication of people that are not in their immediate orb. They underestimate the intelligence. They certainly underestimate the degree to which people think independently and are not the product of influence that stems from commentary or what have you. And I think even if you wanted to take it deeper than that, I think it also boils down to who people, let's call them voters, think is going to fight for them and who isn't. And it's one thing to be a great conservative writer, and it's one thing to be a great conservative commentator, no matter where you are. But if that's all there is, then what good is it doing people? This is the view I think people out in the rest of the country have of all this. Yeah, there's some real brainiacs out there. There's some great commentators. We got some great columnists, but then what? What happens? They're never counsel fighting the Democrats. They never counsel. I mean, it's largely a question. Okay, what's it getting me? And it's not just these guys. You could say it about any conservative or Republican institution in Washington who's been out selling themselves, promising this or that. People are starting to say, well, where is it? Where is all this conservatism that I hear all the time? I don't see any of it in Congress, or much. I don't see any in the Senate at all. Where is it? Yeah, we got a lot of it on Fox, and yeah, we got a lot of blogs, and yeah, we got a lot of websites, but where is it beyond that? Yes, Mr. Limbaugh, but what about talk radio? Well, talk radio is considered to be in the mix each and every day. Talk radio is certainly not the establishment. It would never be permitted to be. Would no way in the world would it ever be permitted to be, unless, it's NPR or, a couple other exceptions. But this all boils down to, this campaign is not hard to understand. There's arguments about this populism. I continue to be misquoted about this. I never said, by the way, just to get it on, I never stated with ontological certitude or fact that populism and nationalism have triumphed or replaced conservatism. I never said it. I asked the question in speculating, thinking out loud here while discussing all this with you, and that question gets cherry-picked and reprinted by itself without any notation that I'm asking a question, not making a declarative statement, what have you. I never, ever said it. The populism's always had an appeal, and so has nationalism. And I understand why they have appeals. It's very simple. Populism and nationalism, translated, is going to make America great again. I hate to say it, but that's how it gets translated. We're going to make America great again. America's going to win. We're going to win. America's going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win. America's great. We're going to restore America's great. It's very simple. Versus a lot of the conservatism, which is, well, we can't because Obama's in the White House. Well, we can't because we don't have the Senate. Well, we can't. It comes to doers versus talkers. I mean, there's any number of ways that you can look at it. But it's to me one of the most fascinating times politically of the entire 27, now into our 28th year, that I have been hosting the program. And I'll tell you, folks, you want to know one of the things that was happening that contributed in putting this program on the map was something akin to what's happening now. Back in 1988, when this program started, it wasn't long after that we learned about the House Bank and the House Post Office. And my first ever appearance on TV as a host of a radio show was on the News Hour with Jim Lara and Judy Woodruff, and it was about the House Bank. Now, if you've forgotten, the House Bank scandal was, and its point was it was so easy to understand. Members of Congress could go to the House Bank and write checks for cash without having the money in their account to do so. Some members of Congress were overdrawn tens of thousands of dollars. It was to the point that it didn't matter how much they were paid, salary, didn't matter what their income was, because they didn't have to live on it. And both parties, but it was easy to understand. I remember being asked to go on, it was Judy Woodruff that interviewed me. It was my first ever time on one of these shows. And I said to her, she was, they were all, why is this real? Why do people care about this? They didn't understand it back then. Judy Woodruff, and she was nice, don't misunderstand. This before they learned enough about who I was to hate me. They were very nice. Very supportive, in fact. I was no kid on the block. Who is this young little whippersnapper? Why, we've never heard of this little guy out there talking conservatism. Who's this little class clown? So they had me in there. And she said, why is this such a big deal to people? Mr. Limbaugh, I don't understand. I said, because the average American can't do this. The average American tried. He'd be thrown out by his bank and maybe end up in jail for crying out loud, and his creditors would be coming after you. There's no way you go to the bank and you write checks for money you don't have. You get an overdraft notice and you're shut down, and these guys can do it all the time. They can do it for years, and it doesn't matter whether they've got the money. And I said, Ms. Woodruff, this is so easily understandable. There's nothing complicated about it, and the American people can't do it, and they're not going to put up with it. Well, her guest following me was a congressman from Michigan named Guy Vanderjagt. And when my segment was over, they went to Guy Vanderjagt. And he raised his index finger, and he was on from Washington. I did my appearance from the PBS studios in New York, same place where Charlie Rose was doing his show then. Same place now, I don't know. But Guy Vanderjagt looked at Judy Woodruff and pointed his index finger. He said, whoever that was, this radio guy, I'm telling you, that is exactly right. This is so easily understandable. And, folks, the lid was blown off this, and it was in part the reason Jim Wright lost his speakership. And then we learned it wasn't just the House Bank, there was the House Post Office, and you could do similar things there. You know what you could do? You could take a donor's check. A member of Congress could take a check, say $5,000 from a donor, and go in and buy $1 worth of stamps and get $9,000 cash in return and change. Well, once this stuff was discovered, and the mainstream media reported it, but ho-hum, not that big a deal, people chuckling about it. But when people in the country found out about it, there was hell to pay. Well, the end result of that was, with a lot of other things which followed, the Republicans winning the House for the first time in 40 years, 4 years later, 1992. Well, the same kind of stuff is happening. The things that are happening now in Washington are just as easily understandable. Except it's not just one thing like the House Bank. It's everything now. It's everything that affects the future of the country. It's the banking system. It's the financial system. It's the spending. It's the health care. It's the immigration. You name it. Everything's out of whack. Everything's being done for the insiders. And everybody outside Washington with an IQ of 90 who is paying attention understands it. And many of them don't like it. Some of the Democrats don't care. As such, and the people in Washington know that the people out in the country don't approve of it and don't like it. They can read the election results, but it hasn't changed the way they're operating at all. That's why there's hell to pay. This disconnect is bigger than I have ever seen it. And now back when the House Bank was exposed, you know what happened? You had members of Congress racing to straighten out their accounts. You had members of Congress running to the microphones, acknowledging their guilt, promising to never do it, making excuses for whatever they did, but it mattered to them and they cared and they did their best to get back in the graces of good people. And a lot of them lost their seats. That's what's not happening today. When all of this chicanery is exposed, the people inside the Beltway keep doing it and adding to the ledger. So it's not unusual that people not in Washington object to what's going in Washington. But now the divide is greater than ever, and the instances of differentiating behavior are numerous, not just one thing like the House Bank or the related House Post Office business. Anyway, let's take a brief time out. We'll come back and return to your phone calls after this, because I know you're panting up out there. Here is Bob in Quincy, Illinois. It's you're up, sir, and I'm glad you waited. Hello.
Oh, thank you, Rush. Please let me introduce a bit of nuance into Trump and the so-called Wilder effect.
Sure.
So if Trump wins the Republican primaries by a greater margin than predicted in the polls, might that effect in the general election be augmented when you introduce Democrats to the mix? And I'm suggesting that Democrats may be willing to vote for Trump, certainly many will, but they will be more unwilling to admit it to a pollster, thus augmenting the effect in the general election. So are we looking at 1980?
You are hoping that what we could be on the cusp here is a Donald Trump 47-state landslide. That's what you're thinking is lurking here in the future?
Well, it's possible if he can beat Republicans by more than what people think, then I think it stands to reason there's stronger candidates in the Republican field. I mean, he has to beat Cruz, he has to beat Rubio and others, Ben Carson. They're stronger than Hillary Clinton or Bernie. So I think if he gets through this Republican thing, it could be 49. I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's got to overcome those unfavorables. 60% unfavorable, and you are counting on this wave of support to maybe soften the unfavorable, but nobody will know till votes are cast because you're looking at a version of the Wilder effect. I have to run, but I'll expand on this theory in mere moments. Wait a minute, somebody mad at me on the... What is this? I'm just seeing it. Oh, slightly ticked off at me. Is it a Megyn Kelly caller on Friday? Oh, I didn't emphasize something. Okay, all right. Well, I guess I've kind of been expecting somebody to be mad at me on it. And what our last caller was trying to point out, he was saying that, and he's obviously a Trumpster, so he's speculating, he's hoping that Trump wins big. He's hoping that Trump wins by bigger margins than whatever predicted by the polling here in Iowa, then in New Hampshire. And if the polls are right, guy may get his wish, but we won't know for a while. So his theory is, his hope is that if that happens, that if Trump ends up scorching the field, that is going to bring a bunch of Democrats over because everybody wants to be part of what's happening now. Everybody wants to be part of what's winning. But his theory is the Democrats will never say so in polling. He said, no, because the Democrats, the voters are going to assume that all pollsters are Democrats. So when they call or their computers call and ask them for their preference, they're all going to say Hillary or Bernie, whoever the Democrat nominee is. But his theory is that if Trump wins big, that's going to automatically attract a lot of Democrats, but we won't know it until Election Day, just like we didn't know that Ronaldus Magnus was going to win in a landslide really until that night. Do you realize the last serious, credible poll 1 week before the election had Jimmy Carter winning by 8 in 1980? And that election was over before the polls closed in California. Jimmy Carter conceded, said no mas, no mas, before they'd even shut down in California. 47-state landslide, and then 49 states in 1984 running against Walter Mondale. So, I mean, but nobody knows that, of course. That was just a Trump voter speculating and hoping. You know, I made a point earlier in the program, speaking of Reagan. I want to repeat this because I think it's fundamentally important as all of you prepare in Iowa to go caucus. You know, and something else. I'm going to go against my instincts here, and I'm going to share with you some of the details of the analysis of the latest Des Moines Register poll, because some analysts think that it's seriously flawed because it's projected a way too high turnout. The problem is there's a lot of numbers, and numbers are hard to follow on the radio, but I'm going to endeavor to do this. But I want to repeat something I said early on. We've had a lot of people on the Republican side, not just in this campaign, but for the last number of years, urge the party to get rid of Reagan. The most recent was a young guy saying, you know, this Reagan fetish that the Republican Party has, we got to drop it. We got to get past it. You know, Reagan era, it's long gone, it's over with. We never hear the Democrats say the era of FDR is over, or the JFK era is over, or they never throw any of their ex-presidents overboard. They don't even throw Jimmy Carter overboard. But we do. We've got the Republican establishment wants to get rid of Reagan. But look at this primary. We have a really great field of Republican candidates seeking the Republican nomination. And many of them are direct descendants of Ronald Reagan. And by that I mean they are the result of the influence of the Reagan presidency, Reagan himself, and the Reagan years. Bobby Jindal, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, before he dropped out of the race. I would even throw Ben Carson in this mix, in the sense that these are young men. These are all great people. Ted Cruz is not a nasty guy, and he's not heartless. I've got the most fascinating piece here about Cruz, by the way. I would love to be criticized the way this piece criticizes Ted Cruz. He's steady, he's solid, he's dependable, he's always of good nature. This is a piece where he's being criticized for this because nobody thinks it's real. No matter how much pressure he's under, he's got a smile for you. No matter how much pressure he's under, how many different directions being tugged, he's the Ted Cruz you know and expect. Never gets mad, never loses his temper, never snaps with people that anybody sees. This piece is written as a criticism in the sense this is not the way people are. Nobody can do this all the time. And it's like saying nobody can be a nice guy all the time. But whatever anybody says or whatever, Cruz is not nasty and he's not heartless. It's the exact opposite in both cases. Because he's a conservative. Conservatives are not nasty people, and they certainly are not mean-spirited or heartless. This is one of the biggest ruses that has ever been successfully played, and that is the characterization of conservatives as mean-spirited and heartless. They have the biggest hearts of anybody around. They want the best for everybody. Look, I am a conservative, and I can speak for every conservative I know here. We love people, and we want the best for everybody. And we want everybody to be responsible for being the best. We want, what's a phrase running around now? There's a phrase that runs around now in the New Age community called, I want to be the best version of myself. Have you heard that said on TV and so forth? Well, you can smirk at it all you want, but conservatism is what makes that possible. Conservatism is what makes you be. Liberalism doesn't. Liberalism doesn't believe in you. Liberalism and liberal people do not think that you have the ability to be your best. That's why you need them. You need them spending your money for you because you won't do it the right way. You need them figuring out where you're going to go to school, where you're going to work, because you won't make the right decision. You need them supporting you financially because you're not capable. They have to believe this in order to make themselves feel necessary and facilitate their acquisition of power. The liberal desire for power is rooted in a contempt of the average person and the belief that average people are incompetent and incapable. That makes them victims. And they are victims of what? Mean-spirited and cold-hearted Republicans. It's a just freaking lie. Conservatives happen to have the biggest hearts of anybody I know. They're the most charitable. They're the most desirous of people literally doing well. Conservatives I know love sharing the things that they love, and they love sharing their passions, and they want everybody to be happy. And they believe that everybody has it in them to be better than what they think they can be. It's the other guys that don't believe that in people. It's the other guys that want you to believe in yourself as a victim with no chance unless somebody's looking out for you who really doesn't even know you or care about you, except when it's time to count votes. Marco Rubio, as I mentioned one day last week, I know all of these people. Donald Trump, Rubio, Cruz, Dr. Carson, I've met them all. And the unabashed, undeniable young conservatives that are seeking the Republican nomination, they're direct descendants of Ronald Reagan. They are what they are because they came of age and believed during the Reagan presidency. And they saw what great times this country had. And they want that again. They want it for everybody. They remember how it happened in the 1980s. And it's not nostalgia. It's an understanding of what works and what doesn't. There are certain things that are timeless. There are certain institutions, manners, good manners, behavioral traits, whatever. There are certain things that are true no matter what era you put somebody in. And conservatism is one of those things. It's not tied to a specific era. It's not tied to specific events. It's a condition of the heart. And these young guys, I say young guys because they're not, they're 40s and 50s. They come from an era of greatness in this country that they lived and experienced. In Rubio's case, it was the Reagan era that allowed his family escape Cuba, come to this country, and for him to become a senator in the United States of America. His father was a bartender. John Kasich's dad was a mailman. You know the drill. And it's this tremendous opportunity. And here's the first day. This is the first day people are going to have a chance to actually go out and do something that's not responding to a poll or getting caught up in outside extraneous influences. Now, a caucus is not as private as a vote. It's all kinds of arm twisting and pressure that goes on in there. This is where you go in and you tell people who you're for, and some say, great, great, and others try to talk you out of it, try to talk you into their guy. And it can go on for a period of time. There's nothing really private about it, which makes it obviously different from other primaries where there were votes. Now, on the Democrat side, old Bernie's getting suspicious. Bernie has heard that Hillary's going to do what Obama did in 2008, and that is bus in a bunch of people that are not even from Iowa. You remember Obama did that? Well, Bernie, he thinks Hillary's going to do the same thing. And guess what? Grab soundbite 22. Old Bernie now has decided that he flubbed it. Back in the first debate when he said this Hillary email thing is nothing and should go away. Crazy Bernie changed his mind on that. This is, go back to October 13th at a Democrat debate in Las Vegas. And Bernie and Hillary had this little back and forth.
Let me say something that may not be great politics, but I think the secretary is right. And that is that the American people are sick and tired of hearing about your damn emails.
Thank you. Me too. Me too.
You know? Enough of the emails. Let's talk about the real issues facing America.
Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Right, okay. But since then, since October, the news on Hillary's emails, it just gets worse every week and in some cases by the day. And it is really bad now. It is so bad now that there are serious ranking Democrats that are scared to death that there's no way something doesn't come of this. It's gotten to the point where it's so big they don't know how the Justice Department can just sweep it away and not do anything with it. And old Bernie has figured that out now, and here he is yesterday on Meet the Press, F. Chuck Todd with the question, the latest revelations about Secretary Clinton or emails. Do they give you personally any hesitation about her electability or about her honesty?
I've been asked every day, by the media, attack Hillary Clinton, attack Hillary Clinton. What I have chosen to do in this campaign is to focus on the issues facing working families and the middle class and not make personal attacks against Hillary Clinton. I think this is a serious issue.
He's changed his mind, but he just can't pull the trigger and go all the way. Because Bernie, what is he, 74? He likes walking. Bernie Sanders likes to walk. So he's not going to go all in on this, but this is a very, very serious issue. Here's Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington, on the Today Show today, and a report about Hillary Clinton and her campaign overall.
Clinton is counting on older women, in the past her most loyal supporters. But this time, even some women have Clinton fatigue.
Ultimately, it's not just being the first woman, though we need one. It's being the right president at the right time.
And the Clinton team has gone high-tech with a new app to spot precincts where they can take delegates from Sanders by steering voters to the third candidate, Martin O'Malley.
Right. So Hillary's bleeding out there, folks. She's bleeding women. She's bleeding voters. She's bleeding. I'm telling you, they are very worried wherever the deep, dark crevices the Democrats gather in, wherever they're worried. But there's nothing they can do. There isn't anybody. They're really worried. We got a brief timeout. We'll come back, and your phone calls resume after this, folks, so be patient. Hey, guess what? Cookie, in the Groove Yard of Forgotten Soundbites, she found those 2 bites of me on the News Hour with Jim O'Hara. And I'd forgotten it was Jim O'Hara in New York that interviewed me with Judy Woodruff on the set, but she was not part of it. She talked to me when it was over, and it was nice. But it's from 1992, and it was my first such TV. I mean, I think I'd been on local TV profiles, but it was my first such appearance in 1992. We'll play those before the program ends. I do want to get back to the phones. This is Mary Jo in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Great to have you. Hi.
Hi, Rush. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling because I am a Christian and I'm a conservative. I became eligible to vote in 1988 and have voted in every presidential election since. I held my nose and voted for McCain and Romney, even though I knew they did not share my conservative perspective. But if Donald Trump wins the nomination this year, it will be the first time in 30 years that I will not vote in a presidential election. And I've actually talked with a number of people where I haven't given my perspective, but they have said the same thing to me. And so I think that Donald Trump has a real problem if he wins the nomination, because Ronald Reagan won 49 states with Christians, conservatives. And Romney lost without them, but I did vote for Romney. McCain lost without them, even though people like me did. But I think that Trump is not going to get the people that didn't vote
Wait a
Romney
minute now. He got the endorsement of Jerry Falwell Jr. out there, who's been running around on the trail with him all over Iowa.
Yes, he did, but he did not get the endorsement by Tony Perkins. He did not get the endorsement of that large group of women pro-lifers. He did not get the Tea Party patriots. I think that I've heard someone call Jerry Falwell's son a cheap date, and I think that might be a reasonable description.
Oh, really?
That's what I've heard. I didn't say it myself.
No, of course not.
I did not think that his perspective on why he voted for it, why he's endorsing him, comes from a conservative perspective.
Right. Well, you really won't vote. So you would be in that group of 60% who view Trump unfavorably out there.
Yes, Rush, I base my vote on integrity, consistency, principles, policy, and the Constitution. And really, on all of those, he does not have integrity in my eyes. He's not been consistent, that's for sure.
Right.
He did
who do you like?
Universal health care.
Who do you like?
I like Ted Cruz, but I would vote for a large number of any of the other Republican candidates. But I won't vote for Donald Trump. And I'm sorry to say that. As I said, I voted in every election since I became eligible.
So, are you comfortable with the possibility that you taking that course of action along with the others that are like you, effectively electing Hillary Clinton and thus continuing the current policies of the current regime, which are destruction of the United States? You're content to let that happen?
I hate to say it, but I am. But just as you said earlier today, Rush, and you've said it over and over, universal health care puts our very lives in the hands of the government. And once they have that control of us, it's all over. So if Donald Trump is in favor of universal health care, which he is, he has said it over and over.
No, wait a minute now. He went out there, and it was originally reported he said it was for single payer, and then they walked that back, that he didn't actually say that. It's the way he went after Ted Cruz again, that as being heartless and letting people die on the streets, that has made people think that, because that's the way liberals talk about conservatives, that they're heartless and mean-spirited and don't care if people die. And I can tell you that that's not who Ted Cruz is. Ted Cruz doesn't want people to die on the street. I got news for you. They already are. Under the Democrats, folks. You know, I've got a story here about, it's Super Bowl week in San Francisco, even though the game's going to be played 41 miles south. The media is headquartered in San Francisco. They're not happy about it because the action's 41 miles away. But anyway, the story is homelessness and what they're doing about the homeless. There's a huge homeless problem in San Francisco, a liberal mecca. And the mayor is talking about sweeping them out of the way and moving them out of the way. You're talking about people who don't care about them? You're talking about people cold-hearted and heartless to people? The homeless, you consider giving a guy a shopping cart and you want credit for having a big heart? Save me. Don't embarrass me. That's ludicrous. It's those guys. And we're back. Okay, do we have... They didn't print out, so grab sound bites. The number, let me see what they are here. 27 and 28. This is back on 1992. Let me get the exact date over here. It is March 13th, 1992. This is me on the News Hour with Jim Lara. He's actually doing the interviewing. He was in Washington. Judy Woodruff was in New York, but she was seated next to me, but she was not part of the interview. And it's about the House bank scandal. And they at PBS and everybody in Washington were very concerned. Why does the country care about this? I was on to explain, what is this such a big deal? No big deal. Why do you people out there care about this? And there's two sound bites, and here's the first.
Well, I really don't think, it is in a sense it gives us an issue, but I think the thing that needs to be said about that, Jim, is that radio talk show hosts and radio talk shows don't invent emotion. It was there. I mean, the public is angry as they can be about this, and there's one good reason for it. This is easy to understand. This is something they can't do. This is the epitome of arrogance. This is the epitome of condescension. And it just won't do, Congressman Fazio, to sit there and say that the people don't care about this, that they want you to sit there and do the work of the country. You haven't been doing the work of the country. When the work of the country gets done, it's by accident, not by design. And it always seems to be wrong, and it seems to be screwed up. And the people seem powerless to do anything about it. It takes a simple issue like this, where you guys can go in and float loans to yourself, interest-free. You sit there and say it's not taxpayer money. It is all taxpayer money. That's the point. You guys are our employees, and you treat people in the country like we are your employees and you're the boss. And it just won't do anymore. And I think that there's going to be much more of a change this fall than you or Speaker Foley seem to think. I think the people out there are genuinely upset about this, and this is the one issue it could be the one that causes a massive shift in seats.
And lo and behold, it did. This is a prelude. This is March 13th of 1992. And the next bite, Jim Lara says, well, why this one? the House Bank Sale. Why is this so important?
Because, Jim, this goes to the root of life. These are people who exempt themselves from laws they pass. These are people who tell us that the tax cuts we got in the 80s are responsible for the deficit. The deficit is the responsibility of the U.S. Congress. They spend the money. And they tell us that it's our fault because we got tax cuts that we didn't deserve, that the prosperity of the 80s was not justified and not warranted. And so here come some people who say we need a pay raise. They don't need a pay raise. They can go to the bank and get a pay raise anytime they want, interest-free, and they don't have to pay it back. And the problem here is that we found out about it.
That's me appearing on TV. Sorry for the audio quality. I don't know what our original source for this is. Probably reel-to-reel audio cassette tape or some such thing. Way, way back. March 13th, 1992, NewsHour with Jim Lara. And again, it's just an illustration of how things haven't changed. They've only gotten worse. And they've become cumulative. And it's reached a point now where we elected people to change all this. And we did over the years. Republicans were given control they hadn't had in 40 years. And especially in the last 7 or 8, when there have been 2 demonstrative landslide midterm election results, nothing to show for it. So it's just a further illustration that all of this disgust is warranted and has been taken for granted. So all this outsider versus insider, elites versus the rabble, it all makes total sense. Here's David in Louisville. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hello, Russ. Great to talk to you again. I appreciate you taking my call.
You bet, sir.
Just got 2 quick questions for you, if you don't mind. And by the way, Russ, not mad at you, I promise. Just full disclosure, I'm a Trump supporter, but I'm going to stick up for Cruz here. I'd just like to know, given Megyn Kelly's admitted dishonesty in the debate with Cruz, do you still think she's not a bad person?
Now, wait.
The day before the debate said she wasn't a bad person and that she's a professional.
Oh, I did say which dishonesty are you talking about? The first debate?
The most recent debate where she called out Cruz, and then after the debate, I'm referencing the Greg from Oakmont, California phone call, where he pointed out that she admitted she was wrong after the debate when nobody was watching.
This was the issue about amnesty.
Yes, sir.
Where she admitted afterwards that he was right about. When I said that she's a good person, I'm talking about my personal interactions with her, and I can't say that I know her. She's not a close circle of friends. We don't live anywhere near each other. But I've been with her enough. She doesn't target people. She's trying to forge her own path in her career. She's a journalist, and there are certain things that journalists have to do there. I'm not defending that. She goes after Cruz. She went after Trump. I think when you get right down to it, you want to know that what I think is the bottom line. I think Fox is burdened with this belief that everybody in the media thinks they're conservative, and they don't want to be thought of that way. So they will purposely hit conservatives hard to show that they are not friends and not biased in favor of conservative. It's no different than the way the Republican Party tries to constantly prove they're not the mean guys the Democrats say. Many conservative journalists, and it's not just Fox, many conservative journalists will do and say things hoping to not be criticized as partisan by their brothers and sisters in the drive-by media. And I don't think it's any more complicated than that. But she can still be a good person even after doing the things that she's done with Trump or Cruz. Those are professional. I was speaking personally, and I was just trying to make the point here that she's not evil and she's not diabolical. That was the only point that I was trying to make.
One last question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
This is regarding Trump, and he gets a lot of attacks for his past liberal positions. And you've spent your entire career trying to persuade people toward conservatism.
Right.
And I find that a lot of his detractors call him a liar for flip-flopping to conservative positions. And I just find it interesting that we spend so much time trying to persuade people to convert to conservatism, and then when one guy says he did convert, we call him a liar.
Well, who is we?
By we, I mean people on the conservative side who say that he is not really a conservative because of his past positions. They're saying he flipped.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, and there are a decent number of those out there. You're right. There are a decent number.
What's the point of arguing conservatism if we're going to call somebody a liar just when they say they?
Well, I think it's rooted in the fact that they don't think Trump's conversion is legit. That he's just saying these things, and they think that he gives it away with momentary slip-ups that indicate that he hasn't really converted to anything.
I don't see any guile in him. The very fact that he says what's on his mind, even to his own detriment, the kinds of things like that, tells me that he doesn't have guile.
Guile defined as deceit?
Yeah, and he's not a slick Harvard lawyer, so he says what's on his mind. So he doesn't come across like he's hiding things.
Well, no. No, in fact, I saw something. I didn't actually see this, so I have to add a caveat here that what I read might not have actually portrayed this accurately, but it was a story on a CNN reporterette named Allison Camerata. And this report said that Allison Camerata admitted that journalists are afraid of Trump destroying them if they criticize him. They don't want to be called losers or whatever names he calls them, so they pull back on the criticism. As I say, I didn't hear her say that. I read some, I don't even remember where, it was over the weekend it said that. But that happens to be true of a lot of people who are afraid to criticize Trump because they don't want to be called this or that. It's amazing how that's paralyzed the Republicans vis-a-vis the Democrats, and it's paralyzing some people about Trump as well. Anyway, David, I appreciate the call, and I got to take a brief time out. I got a little long in this segment, folks, but we will be back, so don't go away. And Ellie in North Royalton, Ohio, great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hi, Rush. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thank you.
I was told that you're running out of time, so I'll try to make my comment brief. I watched the Sarah Palin interview this morning on the Today Show, and I realized more than ever that the mainstream media is out to embarrass and intimidate rather than report the news. She believed she was on the show to talk about the caucus, and, of course, they brought up her son that was in the news recently, and she handled herself dignified and professional, and I think she left Matt Lauer and Savannah Guthrie sitting there with egg on their face.
Yeah, here's the thing. In the pre-interview, and I say this, folks, you know that I have great respect for Mrs. Palin, but she's got to know by now, and I think she does. The pre-interview is for them to find out what irritates you. So if she asks them not to talk about her son, that's what they're going to talk about, especially if it's her, because they hate her. They literally despise Sarah Palin at NBC and pretty much everywhere else. And she knows this. I think what she was doing, most guests will not call the show hosts out on something like this. They'll just behave and live through it. She was calling them out. I didn't see it, so I don't know how upset she was, but I don't think she was surprised. But she was calling them out. She was letting the audience know that they lied to her. They assured her they wouldn't talk about her son, and then did. And I think it's her way of helping to expose the way these people treat her and conservatives in general. Okay, again, pay attention to turnout tonight. A lot of people talking revolution on the verge of taking place here. See what the turnout is. Des Moines Register poll indicates big, maybe record turnout, whether they intended to or not. So we'll follow it. See you tomorrow.